bring in Jane Slater. She doesn't deal with clicks. She is clicks. NFL Network reporter. You can follow her on Twitter at Slater NFL. All right, Jane, separate fact from fiction here. Can you?
I'm with you, Dan. And you know how this works. You've been doing, covering the league long enough. You've been keeping an eye on the Cowboys long enough. Anytime you put the Dallas Cowboys in a headline, people are going to talk about it. And so we're talking about this because a report came out from Adam Schefter that he would entertain a trade if it was Dallas and the Cowboys. So, of course, now it's the offseason. We haven't heard a lot about this Dak contract. So now everyone's talking about it. But when I reached out to one of my team sources, they found it laughable. And that's because they are still trying to truly get this long-term deal done. And we're looking at the tag being somewhere around $37.7 million. We are going to probably hear something about that closer to that tag deadline of March 9th. And then they're going to have to clear some cap space by March 17th to start really effectively having those long-term discussions. And then they, of course, shut this thing down in June. I don't think he's heading for a third tag. They can still do that. That third tag is going to be somewhere in the market of $54 million, which is absurd. They could, of course, give him the non-exclusive tag. That gives them 5 days to match an offer from another team, and then possibly pick up 2 first-round compensatory picks. But the goal here is still to get him signed to a long-term deal. And why would they continue using these costly tags on him if they didn't feel like he was their franchise guy? And oh, by the way, last year's money was in the ballpark of Russell Wilson / Jared Goff type money. Now he's looking to be paid right behind Patrick Mahomes, a guy who's gone to the Super Bowl 2 years in a row. Dak hasn't done that yet. So they feel like it's been a respectable offer. His camp believes that he needs to bear what the market value is. And they feel like this deal should have gotten done 2 years ago. So your problems with money aren't our problems. It's about respect. So there still is no change from last year and years past, Dan. There has to be some give by both sides in order to get this done. But I truly feel like they want to get it done. And as I was told by a team source, it feels, and their tone kind of went up a little bit more productive. But there still haven't been a lot of meaningful conversations.
Why do you think Russell Wilson's agent named teams?
Well, for the reasons we just outlined there earlier, I think you name teams, the Saints, for instance. That sounds like a great destination for a guy like Russell Wilson. But when those teams consider it or they pick up the phone, their next question is, well, how much is this going to cost us? And I keep bringing up Seattle versus Dallas because Seattle's front office has made a lot of potential trades very costly for Dallas. And I mentioned Earl Thomas last week. I mentioned Jamal Adams. Now, he was, of course, with the Jets. Cowboys, in good faith, tried to go after him. Seattle jumped in and said, we'll pay you what you want. Then I was told that the Seahawks wanted Aldon Smith last year. The Cowboys in that experiment wasn't exactly working at times last year. There was a disruption in the pH balance with some of the free agents. Could have gotten rid of him then. Their answer was no. In other words, they're going to either re-sign him or they'll find a way to move him off the books and they get a compensatory pick. But because it was Seattle, the deal didn't get done.
Ooh. Well, you also have Russell Wilson, the $39 million cap hit.
Yes.
I don't think Russ is... It's weird. It feels like Russ and his agent want it both ways. Hey, we want to stay in Seattle, but if you want to trade us, here are the 4 teams that we're going to go to. But I do think the cap hit is really important, Jane.
I love that you bring that up because a lot of people love to come up with these. I'll borrow a phrase from Mike McCarthy last year. You know, some of you guys are playing fantasy football, you know, as it related to what he would do with his offensive line. I'll do that as it relates to Russell Wilson and whatever team, whether it be Dallas or another, trading for him. Seattle also is on the hook for his guaranteed money. So Seattle's going to be okay giving him the guaranteed money and especially go and win in another NFC with another NFC team that we're going to have to play a couple years down the line. Now, look, could the Cowboys sweeten the deal and say, all right, we're going to convince Dak to sign the franchise tag, which again is just crazy to me. We'll convince him to sign the franchise tag, and then we're going to get his approval to trade him. But we're also probably going to have to give up some other things that comes with Dak. So it's asset heavy to move Russell Wilson off the books. I think this is a missive. I think this is a way of saying, Pete Carroll, get on the same page with Russ. Either let Russ cook, find a way that you guys can make this offense work. But when you bring up Dallas, could it happen with another team? Absolutely, sure. We've seen these sort of trades happen. We've certainly seen Jared Goff go to Detroit and Matt Stafford come to LA. These things happen. Just specifically with the Cowboys and people I've spoken to and the way the money bears out, it just absolutely makes no sense. And a lot of people I love coming at me on Twitter and wanting to tell me ways that they've figured out it can happen. I'm telling you, it can't happen.
We're talking to Jane Slater, NFL Network reporter. Help me understand Drew Brees' situation with New Orleans. Of what is he waiting for to make his announcement one way or another?
Great question. Because if you'll recall, last year we were sitting here having this. I feel like it's sort of Groundhog Day for me as it relates to the two teams that I cover and the quarterbacks. Last year we kept waiting. When is the Drew Brees announcement? And of course, he ended up coming back, even though NBC was waiting in the wings. And I can tell you this is 1,000% accurate. Tom Brady was on his way to New Orleans. So, of course, all of us can talk about the hypotheticals that would have applied to the Saints if Tom Brady had come over and him and Sean Payton had gotten in the lab together, what they could have been capable of. I reached out to the Saints last week and I said, any chance? We saw Drew Brees kind of give that final look as he's leaving the dome. I covered that game. It was deflating. It was heartbreaking to watch him throwing a touchdown pass to Brees' son and Brittany Brees and the kids there on the field with Tom Brady and the tears coming down his face on the bench and not even getting a hero send-off. It felt more like a funeral. And so you think to yourself, does he pull a Ben Roethlisberger and come back next year and get the hero send-off that he deserves for what he and Sean have done for that city collectively? I was told no, he is retiring. He's just taking his time, making this decision. And keep in mind, interesting sidebar, last week, of course, Tiger Woods was on his way to see Drew Brees and Justin Herbert. It was my understanding Tiger was doing some sort of work for Golf Tour TV. And so he's supposed to interview Drew. So maybe Drew read the room and felt like this wasn't the time either. But in talking to people with that organization, how we handle it moving forward in terms of media, my sense is that it's coming pretty soon here.
Do you think Brady would have preferred the Saints over the Buccaneers?
It's a good question. I mean, Sean Payton is a different coach than Bruce Arians. It kind of feels like Jimmy Johnson versus Barry Switzer again to kind of compare the two coaches. And then you've got Troy Aikman, of course, being Tom Brady in this scenario. It's hard to say. I know that Tom Brady and Sean Payton's work ethic probably would have matched. I think their intensity would have matched. But Bruce's approach it's sort of this hands-off. I don't know if you've ever dealt with this in your career. It's kind of like the person who's sort of hands-off makes you feel like they're not as invested or as hands-on, and it sort of motivates you a little bit more. We sort of saw the subtlety of that with Bruce Arians calling out Tom publicly earlier in the year. And so I don't know. And I also think just for, just happiness in terms of living close to the beach there in Florida and the life that he and Giselle and the kids have, which is why they sort of left New England. They wanted to change of pace. I think from a personal standpoint, probably the work-life balance is a little bit better for him in Florida. But again, that's just me thinking out loud.
I brought this up about 15 minutes ago. The Houston Chronicle's John McClain wrote a strong column saying it's time for the Texans to listen to trade offers for Deshaun Watson. That got my attention because we know John is as dialed in with the team as much as any reporter, columnist is with any team in America, in my opinion. If you had to bet a week's pay, is Deshaun Watson with the Texans starting this season?
Doesn't feel like it. I've talked to some people that have been involved with that coaching search and how that went down. There is a real funny dynamic as it relates to Easterby, McNair, Nick Caserio, I think kind of got thrown into this unlikely partnership. And I feel like he's trying to right the ship. He's trying to give it a little bit of stability. But of course, when J.J. Watt leaves, then you had the VP of Communications, Amy Palcic. She's out the door too. Bill O'Brien, of course, you could say what you wanted about Bill, but a lot of people liked Bill in that building. I think he just probably took on too many titles. He should have just focused on the coaching as opposed to GM. But with your star quarterback being this disgruntled, that then I think becomes a cancer in the locker room. It starts to spread. It starts to permeate. I think he's playing hardball, and I think ultimately he's going to end up. I mean, I look back to the Jamal Adams situation. Remember, he did not want to be with the Jets. And I don't think the NFL is a lot like the NBA that a star can necessarily demand a trade. But we are seeing a lot of people becoming a little bit more successful with this in years past. But I just feel like that's a situation that is broken. And in order for Houston to sort of turn the page and have the success that they're looking for, meaningful success, they're probably going to have to do that with somebody else that's going to come in there and buy into what that system is down there. But it doesn't feel like Deshaun's going to be the guy to do it.
And I always find the situation fascinating when somebody wants out of a place and then they go to another place and they look around and they go, wait a minute, we don't have anybody here. We gave up our draft picks. We gave up our best defensive player. If Deshaun Watson goes to the Jets, you're going to be giving up your draft picks, you're going to give up some talent. If you go to Miami, it's going to be the same thing. He doesn't have any talent in Houston. And it feels like it's a lateral move. Now, maybe he'll like that owner more than he likes the owner or the front office a little bit more. But to me, it seems kind of crazy that the more valuable you are, the more capital you bring in return. And it's going to be a lateral move. It's 2 steps forward, 2 steps back.
That's a great point. A lot of people don't think about the things that you have to put around a quarterback in order to be successful. That's why a lot of the quarterbacks that are successful are on that first contract, because you're able to put the pieces around them, which is, again, going back to the Cowboy application. When Dak Prescott was making in the $400,000 range, sure, it was easy to, pay your running back and your wide receivers and your offensive linemen and defensive players. But when you start talking about you're eating up 20, 30% of the cap, it's really, really hard to put those pieces around you in order to be meaningful. The reason why Tom Brady was so successful for so long in New England is he always joked that Giselle made a lot of the money, so he was able to give him a hometown discount. Now, to be fair, a lot of quarterbacks can't do that. But to your point, I think when these guys want to go to other teams and it costs them picks in order for them to restock the kitchen cabinet, it is very, very hard for you to find meaningful success.
Before I let you go, do you want to play the J.J. Watt game of where you think he'll end up?
Oh, good question. I love seeing how a lot of these teams have been lobbying for them. I will tell you, it will absolutely not be Dallas, so that's easy. Who are some of the other ones that you want to throw at me?
Well, I'm going to take Green Bay off because I don't think that takes any real risk or any great insight to go, boy, he could go back to Wisconsin where he played his college ball. I'm going to give you Buffalo, Cleveland, Tennessee.
Buffalo and Tennessee, the most intriguing to me. I really think Buffalo would be. I became such a fan of the Bills last year and what they're building there, and it was a slow and patient process, but it feels like it's got a really healthy, vibrant locker room. But I also think if you've ever seen Mike Vrabel at a pro day, I saw him. It was Ed Oliver down at Houston, and he did a bull in the ring with the guy. As a defensive player, you've got to love a guy like Mike Vrabel.
Wait, they were hitting each other?
Yes, Mike Vrabel was 1,000% participating in a bull in a ring exercise. It was amazing, and he's a true players coach. The guys love Mike Vrabel. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen Bussin' the Boys and Taylor the One and Will Compton's podcast. He'll get in the bus with the guys, and I could see Tennessee, if I had to pick right now, if Tennessee can figure out a way to get it done, that would be an outstanding destination for them. And kind of what an interesting send-off that you go to a team that used to be the Houston Oilers in essence. So there's sort of a pettiness there. So I think that would be intriguing.
Jane, great work. Always great to talk to you. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
You as well. Tell the Danettes hi.
Jane Slater, NFL Network reporter.